Well, let's see, a couple things. I am fortunate to have grown up all over the world. So that's where my life started. My parents were, diplomats, and so I had the privilege of being able to grow up in Honduras and Mexico, Venezuela, Jamaica, Ecuador, and then I went to work in Budapest, in Hungary, Czech Republic, and Poland, where I was an empirical officer, and we worked a lot on NATO and then EU accession, which led for me to really focus a lot on economic development. And I saw the big changes after communism and what happened in that region. 40 years of communism actually was difficult. The 10 acceding countries that we see today as part of the EU, which were you know in the process by 2000, the year 2000, 21 years ago. It's amazing how time flies. And we saw that development looking for modernization. The EU actually focused a lot on infrastructure in that particular time. Everyone used to have to use the train, and there was not the highways had deteriorated, so there was a lot of remodernization of entire region. So that was very exciting to see coming back to a more Western way of living. Unfortunately, we do have a problem when it comes to recycling and environmental sustainability. And so that got me thinking. And so I went and I did a master's in regional planning, focusing on the development. I got an MBA in real estate, was our joint program, University of Pennsylvania. And then I started a couple companies and decided that as an entrepreneur, it made more sense. Government moves a little bit slow, but entrepreneurs tend to move faster. And my first company didn't go so well, but my second company did really well. And then I helped start other companies. I was actually a mentor for a lot of women entrepreneurs. And then I went to China. I moved to China. I started another company. And meanwhile, I was actually as I was helping with the World Expo in Shanghai, I actually was able to do some advising. I was actually asked by President Obama to be on his advisory board, and from there, for 2 years, we were in the middle of a recession, and the goal of our advisory board, where people like the chairman of Apple and Qualcomm and a lot of really great folks were part of, which was to get our country to be more competitive. And how do we increase grants? How do we increase the capability of the government to become more entrepreneurial? And then I went to work for the SBA. We have an agency, ministry, that focuses on small businesses. And so that's where, companies that you've seen today, well, Ben and Jerry's and Under Armour and Intel have received help. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in my presentation. But 50% of the businesses in the U.S. are small businesses, and so the government itself has to buy 23% of anything that they buy has to come from a small business, a women-owned company, minority-owned company, a veteran-owned company, and the disadvantaged communities. So the government actually is able to be a catalyst for a lot of this, and so it was really great to be part of this, of the regrowth, getting back the country to think about no more recession. So it was really good to take part of that. Then after Obama left, we all leave with the president. I went and started another company and called Disruptive Factory with 5 other women. And then, I've been traveling between Palo Alto and Barcelona, and now I'm starting a new fund that is going to be focusing on health and agriculture. I'm actually also an advisor for the World Bank, as well as many different organizations. And so we actually are looking to help the modernize, which I call modernize the agriculture and health. I realized during the pandemic that these two are very much tied together. How we live our life, how do we eat, how do we help the industry actually be more um, active, but also uh, have access, because a lot of the things that we saw during the pandemic and today we're still seeing it is supply chain, right? Supply chain is something not sexy, but it makes the world go round and connected. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in that world, where we actually believe that there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of opportunities, especially for women and disadvantaged communities and the developing world, as well as in even in Europe and in the U.S. We suffered a lot when it came to the pandemic. So yeah, that's my story, and I'm excited to be here and be able to be in Spain and in the U.S. uh, Now a lot more here, but it'll be a good next step. So as an entrepreneur and as a woman, I always think we multitask a lot, but we also carve our own path, and we also can switch gears much easier. So it's an opportunity. Life gives you lemons sometimes, but you gotta make some really good lemonade. So so I'll start with my presentation, and I'll make sure that let's see if you guys can see it this time. Vamos a ver. Share. ¿Por qué no está sharing? ¿Lo ven? Do you guys see it? Is it? ¿Sí? Super. Okay. Okay, so one of the things I really think is going to transform the world, and in my first class at Wharton, in my first class, the gentleman who started the Grameen Bank, was one of the first models where Yusuf actually focus on women and in developing areas, women that were in the agriculture area, because there was no saving mechanism, there was no financial mechanisms for women in areas like that to be able to save and finance and invest. So that always stayed with me as a way that even in small communities we can see that, and even in cities like in Barcelona, for example, or here in Palo Alto, in California, we see a lot more women investing in mobile, and we see women looking at financial mechanisms, and it can be food, it can be technology, it can be health, it can be anything, but giving you the ability to be able to finance your own projects is really important. We've seen really low numbers, but in the last 2 years, we've seen a lot more interest in investing in more women in the area of technology. I'm blessed to have been part of the Paris Agreement, which we actually were able to get the sustainable goals done, and so for the first time ever. And so it's good to see this not only as an opportunity for us to see the world, but also to see what we can do within those goals, because there is a business opportunity here. If we're able to reach some of these goals, a lot of large corporations are trying to do this, but if we can figure out a company or a software or a solution to be able to transform this and be able to get these points on their corporate ESG ladder, then we have an opportunity to do really good business. So I always like to show this as a way for us to keep in mind that we have to be able to focus on making our world a little bit better, especially for future generations. We're very fortunate that a lot of young people care about this. So I'm so happy that we were part of that history. So when we talk about technology, years ago, we weren't thinking about crowdfunding. We weren't thinking about digital transformation. We weren't thinking about autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing. And this today is very much alive and in your face. And the way we do things, actually, all of it includes all of the different things. Machine learning, the way we see data, I think we still are right at the tip of the iceberg. We still have so much more to do with our data. And, be it that ways to make it more private, absolutely. But people are not going to give up on using or giving information and acquiring information. So we will need quantum computing. We will need edge computing. We will need supercomputers. So this is something that I believe we should always be constantly educating ourselves, learning and reading, and seeing how we can actually be able to use these to our advantage, right? I'm very much involved in blockchain. I think it's a way for us to be able to have less fraud, better traceability, and a decentralization. Folks really are looking now at crypto. It's just one of the products of the blockchain, but the blockchain gives us that ability to have a voice, to have a bigger voice in government, I believe. And the concept of decentralization is something that we really have to take seriously. I think government has taken a bigger role than it should. And in general, the citizen has to come back to the center, right? It has to think of more of a collaborative way. And we've seen that. It's interesting. When we tried to, we did actually. We tried and we were successful when talking about crowdfunding. When we put it into legislation in 2010, it was something very new. People didn't realize that this could be a way for us to finance entrepreneurs and be able to get the crowd to get enthusiastic, right? And so when we get the crowd moving, not in one direction, but in several directions for the greater community, I think this has a way to transform your world, and into that, we are in a new revolution of technology. It's actually, if we can use it for good, I think this will make a huge difference. Now we need to have those metrics, right? We need to figure out how, what is good, which is what I admire about Europe with GDPR, figuring out, what is private, what is the information that large companies can and cannot use. So we have to step one step at a time, right? And we'll always have challenges all the time, and I believe in disrupting the status quo. I think that if we don't change things, we will not have innovation. We will be, always, we will always have regulations. We will always be judged. We will have to make large investments. And I know that there's always the long return on investment when it comes to crazy ideas, right? That's what used to be the excuse before. Oh, we don't have enough women companies to invest in, or we don't have enough women companies to subcontract with. And so that's always an excuse. But I think that we can have the power to make those challenges, to face those challenges, right? And what we have today at our tip of our hands is a simple tool that started just in 2008. Yeah, no, 2007 was when the iPhone got launched, and the first application was 2008. So just imagine, this was only 13, 12 years ago. And we have been able to look at all different types of ecosystems and be able to measure and be able to connect. And with a simple thing like iPhone, right? And so I always, from a digital transformation perspective, I always like to give some roadmaps, some ideas. We always want to go ahead and transform. We always want to learn, to modernize our company, or modernize our systems, or modernize, if you're a nonprofit as well. But I always, it's important to learn and keep up. How do you upgrade? How do you train your staff and your team? How do you not just implement a new digital a new software or a new process, but you have to have your employees buy in, and as well as figuring out the strengths and weaknesses of our team, right? I always say you have to play a couple scenarios to figure out if this certain strategy is the best for you in your world. So always think, you come into these companies, and during the pandemic, we were really aware that 50% of the companies hadn't had a digital strategy. 50% of the companies, still had pen and paper. They did not even, do anything that made it a little bit more modern. And I remember the story, I think it was about 9 months ago in Madrid, where a pharmacy decided to hire these three young computer people, and their sales went up the roof, 600, 700% return. And a small business like a pharmacy, right, was just that's we have to innovate. We have to figure this out. So it's always important to think about modernization and technology in a positive way for your business. And as Trin said, I'm a smart city advocate. I believe that everything is interconnected. I used to give this presentation on smart cities long time ago, and people would say, this is never gonna, autonomous vehicles is never gonna happen. And now you see them all over the place. So how do we create smart infrastructure? How do we create I just sat the other day with these young team who created the autonomous tractors. So a bunch of autonomous vehicles for farming, and all that data that you can create between the connection of food supply and the way we farm our lands, and get it from farm to table. All of that takes technology, takes education. It takes repairing of roads and highways, and so many different things. So because of that, we've been able to improve people's health. We've been able to lower disease. We've been able to save water, and clean and have water be cleaner for our community. So there's always ways that we can improve this. And this is a very long slide, but it tells you the idea of our first text message was sent between Queen Victoria and our President Buchanan, and it took 16 hours. And today we get upset if it doesn't take less than minus 0.005 seconds. But we've gone a long way from when we decided to send the man to the moon. That really triggered a lot of innovation in the U.S. and across the world. That connectivity between our satellites. What we see today as drones, for example, we see these mini little, spaceships running around, telling us the data on irrigation in areas, telling us, helping us move medicine to areas that don't have any access by infrastructure. And it lets us know that there's tons of people that are connected, and we're very excited about 6G, and now we're today in the government we were talking about 7G, which we still don't even have 3G really running well in Silicon Valley, but we'll see. And like I always say, everything is interconnected. I know where my dog is all the time. I know that I can actually get tracking on the type of olive oil that I like my olive oil to come from Spain, not from Italy. I like for me to know that I can actually be able to go somewhere and do telemedicine if I don't have access to a doctor. Security is a very important thing for me. I grew up in developing countries, and I think it manages, even though we are very respectful of privacy, it manages security in a very good way. Just to give you a little bit of background on our government, in Europe there's the Horizon 2020, Horizon 2027, which is modeled after our SBIR STTR program, which we helped the EU understand that model when we did our patenting agreement. So between the EU and the US, our patenting process during the Obama administration was actually, we cleared a lot of hurdles where we can recognize each other's science and research, and the patent process to be able to recognize each other's work and be able to move this a lot faster. One of the most important things that I think is important is how do we open government, right? How do we have data? That data, like I said, is still so nascent. We still have so much to learn. But when the government decided to do Open Gov, we gave a lot of information that was readily more available. That's how the sharing economy got started. We moved into be able to create Ubers and Airbnb and figure out ways that people could actually, during the recession especially, have a job, be able to rent out a room in their home because they had lost their job. And so there was, these type of companies grew. We thank God that happened, because if it wasn't for that during the pandemic, we wouldn't be able to have our delivery services that we had, that we depended so much on, people being able to deliver your food, right, and deliver medicine and deliver things that weren't available before. So that's just one of the many examples that in between private and public partnerships, we actually, are able to, with government help, start all these famous companies. Just in your iPhone alone, 70% of an SBIR grant is part of. So those grants, and I know many countries have them, and I know this is important because with those grants, we're able to start those companies. We're able to innovate, and just Qualcomm alone, Qualcomm, which is a huge company, got 5 grants when Urban Jacobs got started. 5 grants, and you see Qualcomm what it is today. And so, great story for us here is Chobani. I don't know if people know it, but Chobani, the young man from Turkey, came, and the yogurt back 10 years ago or longer was not great in the US. And so now all of the milk in New York, state of New York, goes to Chobani to create this yogurt. And so it's interesting how all of a sudden the demand for this simple yogurt that's so tasty can actually, and it's very healthy too, which is amazing. So this young man learned about the SBA loans, he learned about the SBA grants, learned about manufacturing and all these incentives that we were getting for manufacturing. He started Chobani. And so, examples like that are always it's really important to talk about, because we have to elevate folks that have done amazing things. One of my favorite companies, 23andMe, started by women. This is the one that you put in your DNA, you put in your saliva, and we're able to track your ancestry and your DNA, and it's a company right out of Palo Alto. And it's the amount of many companies have come out of the grant process, like the ones that you see on the screen, are changing the panorama of what our health industry is going to look like. So this is one of the 13,000 in the U.S. that we have been able to award, and you see the successes today. So it's exciting to be able to talk about them. Collaboration between governments in countries with the G8 came together to create the open data program that we had initiated in order for us to have ag data across the world. And also, when we talk about safety, right, we never think that agriculture would have such a tremendous issue with safety. And today we've seen it, right? Ebola. So how you tie health and agriculture, there's ways that they actually always touch each other. And we have to figure out ways that it's safe for our families, it's safe for not only for consumption, but it's safe for our animals. And how do we actually, feed people in a better way, and figure out ways that people don't go hungry. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about. Back to the Sustainable Development Goals, I see these as opportunities. I always tell companies to pick 2 or 3, work towards getting those goals, work towards how do we get to modernize, how do we get to come to a fair ground, to fair playing field. How do we improve the quality of our climate? How do we improve areas of disadvantage, areas of conflict, right? How do we get that to become something that is part of everyone's conscious? And just to touch base a little bit on the blue economy, right? Everything touches water. Water is definitely something that I think will be growing a lot. There's an increased interest of looking at entrepreneurship in the blue economy, from lakes to oceans, and we're still so much to discover. 2/3 of our world is covered by water, and it touches all the different industries that I spoke about. But I think that there's some good opportunities that we should tap into and scale and grow. And I think that as women, we we can, relate to those necessities and to that innovation. So that's my little presentation. This is my email, and like I said, willing to always help and mentor and help impulse more women to grow and think about the technology transformation of today in any industry. But if there's more interest in agriculture and and um, and health, I think that we do have an opportunity there to grow those industries in a bigger way.